So far in this unit, we've looked at how psychologists design studies and hopefully avoid turning them into total disasters. But today we're switching gears. We're not asking how to study something, we're asking who we are studying. In psychology, the people you study are called participants, and choosing the right ones matters. Are we studying adolescents navigating the social pressures of high school? Middle-aged adults trying to balance parenting, careers, and the slow existential dread of turning 40? Or maybe toddlers who refuse to eat anything that isn't shaped like a dinosaur? Good research starts with good sampling. So, if you're ready, grab your notes, fire up those neurons, let's jump in. The people you choose to study matters a lot. Pick the wrong people, and your entire study could lead you in the wrong direction. You might draw the wrong conclusions, overlook important groups, or assume something is true for everyone when it's really only true for a very specific few. And that brings us to today's focus, sampling. No, not the kind of sampling where you score free cheese at the grocery store, though let's be honest, that's a good time too. In research, sampling is the process of deciding who to include in a study, and how psychologists make sure the participants actually represent the larger group they want to understand. Sampling starts with identifying the entire group you want to learn about. This is called the population. For example, if you want to study high school students in the US, your population isn't just 30 kids in your study. It's all high school students across the country. The problem, however, is that you can't study everyone in that population. I mean, you're not going to track down and interview every single high school student in the country. That would take forever, cost a fortune, and probably get you banned from a few cafeterias. That's where a sample comes in. A sample is a smaller group of people you actually study, a group that represents the larger population. In this case, your sample might be 200 students from 5 randomly selected high schools across the country. In sum, the population is everyone you want to study, the sample is a smaller group you actually study. And there are several ways researchers choose who makes it into the sample. One of the best and most reliable ways is called random sampling. Random sampling means that every person in the population has an equal chance of being selected for the study. Let's say you want to study how retired adults stay socially connected after leaving the workforce. Instead of just interviewing your super chatty neighbors or the folks who organize every neighborhood block party, you get access to a list of retirees in your area. You assign each a number and use a random number generator to select 100 of them. Now everyone, from the retiree who golfs 5 days a week to the one who still uses a flip phone by choice, has an equal chance of being selected. Why does this matter? Because it gives you a better chance of collecting results that truly reflect your population. And when your sample accurately represents the larger group you're studying, that's called a representative sample. That just means your sample includes the same variety of people you'll find in the full population. Things like age, gender, race, income, education level, and background. And when you have a representative sample, you can do something really important in research. You can generalize your results. That means your findings are more likely to apply not just to your sample, but to the larger group you're studying. But what happens when your sample doesn't reflect that diversity? Let's say you're trying to find out how concerned Americans are about crime in their communities. You only survey 30 residents from a gated, affluent suburb where crime is rare. The biggest incident all year, an Amazon package was delivered to the wrong porch. Surprise, they all feel perfectly safe and aren't very concerned about crime. Now, does that reflect how people across the country feel about crime? Probably not. That's an example of sampling bias, when your sample doesn't fairly represent the population and ends up skewing your results. Now, this is worth repeating because it trips up a lot of AP Psych students. Don't confuse random sampling with random assignments. They sound alike, but they're completely different concepts, like identical twins with totally different personalities. Random sampling is about who you include in your study. It helps you generalize your results to a larger population. Random assignment is about how you split people into groups once they're in your study. It helps you test for cause and effect. All right, back to sampling. As great as random sampling is, here's the reality. Not all research uses it. Sometimes, researchers go with something called convenience sampling, picking people who are easy or convenient to reach. Basically, whoever's nearby. Your classmates, people walking through the mall, that one guy who volunteers for every psych study just for free snacks. It's fast and it's easy. But it's also prone to sampling bias, and it's not great for generalizing results to a larger group. All right, let's lock in with a quick recap. We just laid the foundation for how psychologists decide who to include in your study. Tattoo this on your psych brain. A population is the big group you want to learn about. A sample is a smaller group you actually study. Random sampling is vital. It gives everyone in the population an equal chance of being chosen, which helps you get a representative sample that reflects the large group you care about. And if your sample isn't representative, like when you only study people who are nearby, your friends, your family, your dog, if they could fill out a survey, that's called sampling bias. All right, thanks for watching AP Psych Brainiacs. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next video. And as always, when in doubt, trust the data, not your gut.